looking at the essence of awe today. And this experience took place in Norway. So I just wanted to give you a sense of where Norway is on the globe, and also kind of a picture of what a long, narrow country it is, how it really moves up the whole Scandinavian, the west side of the Scandinavian coast. Where you see down in the bottom left-hand corner, the North Sea, and then right above that, you'll see the Shetland Islands, which belong to the United Kingdom. Where we're going to start our journey today is right across from that. You probably can't read it, but it's actually Bergen, Norway. And so when we land in Bergen, Norway, and go into town, this is what you see. It is now a World Heritage Site. As you can see, the Norwegians have done a remarkable job in preserving that area. However, we're not going to spend too much time there because we have a train to catch. And that train is going to take us to a town called Flum. So as we board this train, we then have an opportunity to travel through incredibly verdant, mountainous areas with really towering peaks and incredible waterfalls. I mean, this is the scenery along the way. It's about an hour and a half journey to get to Flum. And when we arrive in Flum, we're at the end of the Flum railway line. Now, we have probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours before the train returns, because this is simply a day trip for us. So we're going to actually take a walk. Where you see those people down there going toward the railway, in other words, it look like they're leaving from around a bus terminal area and moving down the harbor area. We're going to actually go in the direction that they're coming from in order to begin to move around and get this scenic view of Flum. And as you can see, Flum is in a U shape. Not only is it the end of the railroad line, but it's also at literally the bottom of the U of this incredible fjord. Because of course, Norway has almost 1,200 of these fjords. They're deep water canyons that were created by glaciers. Initially, they had ocean water fill them up. And then for those that became landlocked, they became filled with fresh water. So this particular one, I have to look at the name because I always have trouble. My Norwegian's not great. is Artlandsfjord. And what's significant about Artlandsfjord is that it is about 3,000 plus feet deep. And the mountains that come out of the fjord are almost 6,000 feet high.
Wow.
That's 6,000 feet above the water line. So it was really at this moment in time when I was there and had walked to the center of the U and was looking at this midnight blue water, because this is in fact where the cruise ships come in from, the land of the midnight sun. And as I was standing there, all of a sudden, I just felt all of this energy move into me. It was a visceral experience. It was hard to describe because I didn't have any words for it. You know, one of those kind of take your breath away, but rather than it just taking your breath away from here, taking your whole breath away from your body and filling you up with something else. And as I was having that experience and sort of trying to figure out what was happening to me, all of a sudden I heard, sort of in my inner ear, this is why you have the word awe. In other words, this is what awe is. Mm-hmm. This is the essence of awe. The word serves the purpose so that you can know the essence of awe that you're experiencing. And you know, I didn't have any other context, one, for what was happening to me. I mean, this happened when I was literally in my mid-20s. And I had no context for why it was happening or what was happening, but it was so visceral that there was no denying that it had occurred. And as a consequence of that, I began to understand something else, because walking back to the train station and continuing to see this incredible, spectacular vistas, these vistas that are just breathtaking in and of themselves, I knew that I had somehow experienced this, something that was beyond what we normally describe as simply a moment of awe. That I had actually experienced the energy that carries the frequency or vibration of awe, and that energy is actually the energy that serves as the gateway for transformation. Because in that moment, I was transformed easily, effortlessly, you know, and I was transformed in the sense that I was opened up to having other experiences of awe. And yet it was the embedding of the essence of awe that had moved into me that allowed me to know that all of those other experiences were also carrying a particular aspect of that frequency. But that what I experienced here was the full-bodied, if you will, experience of that frequency. So, you know, this is just to give you a sense of how it was there. And when you look at this photograph, you know, to kind of ask you, what do you experience? I mean, I'm sure, Terry, that you have something that you could share with us about that.
Well, let's see. Okay, so you've unmuted me. I'm just in awe of the, you know, of the, you know, when you were describing that moment so many years ago, it was as if you realized that a certain level of activation and initiation had taken place.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, you know, that experience that, well, you know, just to repeat, you know, it was that experience that opened you up to awe-inspiring moments, you know, throughout your lifetime. And not from a superficial level, but from a, you know, from a total sensory level. And so my question to you is, what was the effect for you? You know, as you, yeah.
It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
What I realize now is that the effect was because of the ease and effortlessness with which I had this experience. The effect was, it was almost like I was infused, if you will, with the understanding that transformation does not have to be difficult. It does not have to be a struggle. That it is a natural way of being. And if we are open to it, that there can be this sort of flow, this ease, this, if you will, naturalness. And without even kind of consciously realizing it, that's ultimately what led me to develop my Wild Wisdom Journeys, you know, so that people could actually have an experience of transformation that's fun, that's fascinating, that's profound in ways that they never even imagined, and yet is in many ways very effortless. And you know, Anya and I are looking at how the whole notion of transformation can be, that notion can be carried into our humanity rising, because, you know, we now face some horrific challenges as a human species, if you will, and certainly as a society in this country. And so how can we actually call forth awe in a way that would allow us to begin to find, navigate a path, if you will, through those very deep, and at this point, very, very dangerous waters, very murky and very dangerous waters.
Yeah. So are you suggesting, Sylvia, that people sort of getting out in nature and just seeking that connection in natural environments, that there's a need to do that, that the need to connect at a level of transformation that helps to evolve the consciousness to a place where you're able to, be in this chaos, because it is chaotic now. But not to be taken over by it, not to succumb to it. That this is, like a means of sort of rising above the, of a noise and the, turmoil.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a very, I think, critical part of the way that we need to proceed. And then we can add to that sort of the level of reconnection and even sort of revitalization and restoration that we receive from the earth. Because if you think about it, I mean, the whole planet is really a place of awe. I mean, really, truly.
Right.
I mean, we're just walking around on the surface. I find that really filled with awe, just the fact that when I'm, walking down the street, I'm actually walking on the surface of the planet, and the planet is rotating, and I'm not falling off into space. But yeah, I think it's got to be a fundamental piece to reconnect to the earth and the awe that the earth is ready to provide us with, and then to use that as the gateway to transformation, which means we have to come together and have conversations and really look at what we're really dealing with, and then begin to ferret out a path forward and allow solutions to begin to emerge. So
yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just
what's coming up. Okay.
Go.
Okay. So
I just wanted to add that when I'm in nature too, what it does is it brings me into the present, because that's what my experience was watching these slides. I'm totally in the present. Prior to that, I was like, oh, I don't know how to mute. What am I, am I doing the recording right? And oh, I've got to get to the bank. I could hear my monkey mind a little bit. And I went right into, right into the photo and right into the present. And I think that's what nature does too. It brings you right into your, your senses. Like you said, it's a full sensory kind of initiation, and it kind of brings you right back into all your senses, into the present. And it reminds you how chaotic nature is, but it's intentionally chaotic. It's always transforming, and it's totally natural, and it's part of the process. So I think nature is really critical for that reason. And then also to gather with other people, because, when you meditate, they say when you meditate with a group of people that have been meditating, it's easy to click into that frequency. It's the same thing. If we start gathering with people who can access this frequency of awe and stay in the present and start talking about not, oh, what if, and we stay in the present and we just say, what's available now? How do we want to be right now? And then we start to know what to do together. So I think it's both, gathering together and getting into nature.
Yeah. As you were talking, Sylvia, like all of a sudden I could see this this sign, from awful to awe.
Oh, I love that.
Love it.
Oh, this is awful. I gotta take some awe in this moment,
I love it. That is
Let me take a walk, right? Let me take a walk to the park or something,
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, like I kind of like this concept. I don't know if you were wanting to connect, the whole idea of being in places like this, because I know your journey, like like journeys always kind of offer see, there's this like this whole idea of seeking, when I went on a journey with you to, what was that, Rotorua?
Rotorua, yeah, New Zealand.
Rotorua. Oh, it's Rotorua. It's like the sewage people, excuse me.
That's right.
Well, they're kind of, cleaning some, toxic thoughts out. But yeah, that picture, it was something about that path. When I looked at the picture, I could see a path, and something clicked on the inside and said, if you go in there, if you dare to take this journey into this place, you'll find what you're looking for. And the awe that I connected with during that journey was sort of ironic, because I was disturbed by all of the chaos that that was that was surrounding me and us. And there was this playground in this, there was this playground, and the playground was built on springs or something. I mean, the earth was bubbling up, and it looked as if it, and then I saw this city, these neighborhoods that was sitting on land that could possibly not be there the next morning, but people built there anyway, and they would, and they lived there, and they were aware of the changing, what am I trying to say here?
Well, the actual natural environment, because it's one of the most geothermally active places on the planet. So.
Exactly. And I'm looking at this playground, and I'm thinking, people built a playground for their children, on volcanic, land. And then you showed me the other picture. There was another picture, and you could see all this lava. I think, everything had exploded, and, and then, then there was this future, there was this picture of a future time, and people, conditions had changed, and people had, built a community.
Right.
And what that did for me, and it was transformative, by the way, it calmed me down, because I realized that's life.
Yeah.
That's life. That, one moment, like Hawaii, you can be in a situation where, like the volcanoes are going off.
Right.
But people still live there. Somehow they manage to live, like they manage to find something that, I don't know, grounds them, something that assures them, something that allows them to live through the disruption, and things settle down and life goes on.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Let me interrupt you, Terry, because we want to make sure we stay to our 30-minute commitment. But it's perfect segue because, Anya, why don't you talk a little bit about this whole notion of what Terry's describing relative to how you move, how you adapt, but in that adaptation you become transformed, and you make adjustments to the sort of wildness that's occurring.
Yeah, and I think that it was a perfect example, Terry, that you were sharing from one of your wild wisdom journeys with Sylvie the Explorer, because that's kind of what we're looking at when we start with our Facebook group, the gateway to the quickening, and we want to give some context to what's happening now in our world, and the fact that if we stay in the present and just look at what's happening now, and we give context to our history and nature and this kind of chaos and this kind of disruption is, like you said, it's part of life. It's definitely part of nature. And so staying in the present is one, and not getting all, not wasting a lot of energy and invoking a lot of fear and terror about what could be, what might be, but just dealing with what is now, and then developing those skills of knowing, trusting yourself that you'll adapt, that you will adapt personally to what happens. You know, your own personal human development will continually transform and adapt to what it needs to be. And that together, you know, as we start to gather more and more people that can do that are doing their own personal human development work to be able to be adaptable and in awe of transformation and actually welcoming transformation. Because let's face it, we all are being called to a much heightened and deeper level of transformation in order to work as a collective. And so you want to gather people that buy in on that. Say, yeah, I'm ready. You know, I'll do whatever I need to do personally, and yet orient it towards the collective, orient it towards, now it's not just about, oh, I want to have another car and a vacation home. You know, it's like, let's orient it towards what the collective needs. And it needs us to be in awe of transformation so that together we can start reimagining, you know, and the solutions are not individual anymore. You know, I have a piece, you have a piece, Sylvia has a piece, and we have to come together oriented towards that and really have a different way of approaching differences too. You know, this whole thing about agreement, it's so passé. Who cares if we agree? I want to understand. And we each need to understand how the other's perceiving the world, how the other's experiencing the world, because that you have an answer from that, a piece of the answer that I don't have, and vice versa. So I think it's a perfect analogy for how we have to reimagine how we engage personally and collectively. And all of this is leading us to understanding that. And the old ways of engaging and seeing and perceiving and needing to be right and defending and all that stuff, it's just, we aren't going to make it if we stay in that mindset. And so the more we can gather that, you know, kind of develop these skills or just a different way of being open. And I want to bring it back to what you said about how, Sylvia, this experience opened you. It's like you embodied the sort of core whole body experience of awe. And that's what we want to be developing together as a human race, that we recognize awe. We look for awe. You know, we're in the experience of awe. And in many ways, I am in awe of how the shit has hit the fan. And you know, I've wanted all of these old ways to blow up. But when it actually happens, it's very scary. You know, it's like, oh my God. But in a way, I'm in awe. It's like, I didn't ever think I'd see opening and this, you know, I've always talked about the empire falling, and I wanted it so bad, but it's actually happening. And so I need to stay in awe about that. Like, oh, it's finally happening. You know, it's become so ludicrous and so horrific, and nobody can mistake it. It's, you know, you don't have to convince people that something's wrong anymore.
That's true.
So it's an opportunity. It really is, and I'm in awe of it. But I don't have the solution. We need all of us.
Yeah.
So, well, what is exciting, I have to say, is that, you know, for not just you, Terry, but all those who will have an opportunity to listen to this later, you know, we want to invite you to stay tuned, because the good news is that although this is the end of the 3 series live conversations around essences that we put together, they're really a stepping off point or a stepping stone to the next level, which is really going to be about us inviting people to join us for an actual call that really frames out the notion of the personal human development and the collective human development, and gives people an opportunity to kind of assess where they are with that. And as a consequence of that, to become part of a private Facebook group. And then from that, we'll have some other activities that we'll invite people to participate in, so that really we're on this journey already, so that really we can move beyond where we are now and be in the presence of awe and in the presence of transformation, and partner with it in ways that allow us to create the future we actually want to experience.